Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari
Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivardhari
Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivardhari
Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana
Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana
Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana
Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana
Yamunatiravanachari
Yamuna Tiravanachari
Yamunatiravanachari
Yamuna Tiravanachari
Jai Radha Madhava Jai Kunja Bihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
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 Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Shaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Budhirayet Srimad Bhagavatam, we're on Canto 1, Chapter 2, Text 22. Tobai Kavayo Nityam Bhaktim Padmaya Muda Vasudeve Bhagavati Purvantyatma Prasadanim. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada.
Try.
Translation. Certainly, therefore, since time immemorial, all transcendentalists have been rendering devotional service to Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead, with great delight, because such devotional service is enlivening to the self. Purport. The speciality of devotional service unto the personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, is specifically mentioned herein. Lord Sri Krishna is the Swayam Rupa personality of Godhead, and all the other forms of Godhead, beginning from Sri Baladeva, Sankarsana, Vasudeva, Aniruddha, Pradyumna, and Narayana, and extending to the Purusha avatars, Guna avatars, Lila avatars, Yuga avatars, and many other thousands of manifestations of the personality of Godhead, are Lord Sri Krishna's plenary portions and integrated parts. The living entities are separated parts and parcels of the personality of Godhead. Therefore, Lord Sri Krishna is the original form of Godhead, and he is the last word in the transcendence. Thus, he is more attractive to the higher transcendentalists who participate in the eternal pastimes of the Lord. In forms of the personality of Godhead other than Sri Krishna and Baladeva, there is no facility for intimate personal contact as in the transcendental pastimes of the Lord at Vrajapumi. The transcendental pastimes of Lord Sri Krishna are not newly accepted, as argued by some less intelligent persons. His pastimes are eternal, and are manifested in due course once in a day of Brahmaji, as the sun rises on the eastern horizon at the end of every 24 hours. Jai. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shlakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Lord Premanande Haribol.
Haribol.
So, after we've completed the famous section of this chapter, verse 16 through 21, really give a rundown of the whole process of devotional service and what happens at the different stages of consciousness. And having done that in 6 verses, if you think about how much is contained in those verses, it's so much. Like the power of associating with devotees purifies the heart and gives you a taste for hearing and chanting. Regular hearing and chanting purifies the heart of lower modes of nature. Once the lower modes of nature are gone, you're established in sattva. The mind is satisfied. What happens there? Once that refines, then you have the realization of yourself, actually, and of Krishna. And so because of this, certainly therefore, that's what the therefore is for. It's because of all that, because it's so beautiful, because it's so purifying, because it is so practical and easy, and it allows us to achieve these results, both material and spiritual. That is, freedom from the modes of material nature, preceded by at least being in the mode of goodness primarily, then freedom from the modes of nature, liberation, and then realization of Krishna. This is an appeal to authority. This is how people have been doing things. Since time immemorial, all transcendentalists have been rendering service to Krishna, the personality of Godhead, because it's enlivening to the self. And so there's 2 different ways of understanding this verse, and they're both true. And one is that, therefore, bhakti and worship of the Lord is, with whatever form of the Lord you're worshiping, is actually ideal and is so much better than not practicing bhakti, because you can't have such ease of liberation, you can't have such realization of your own self and the Supreme Person without bhakti. And as the later in the chapter is going to point out, worshiping the demigods doesn't give you such a result. Only worshiping the source. As a Muslim friend of mine put it one time, our spiritual tradition explains that you should worship the creator, not the creation. And that's part of what's being said here. As the purport points out, the creator, the supreme source of everything, is the source of all other forms of Godhead and also other forms of living entities such as ourselves. Prabhupada points out here, it says, the living entities are separated parts and parcels of the personality of Godhead. So we can worship anything we want to. We're little units of attention. We can give anything attention anywhere we would like. And if we give attention to a living entity who's not the Supreme Person in any of his forms, then it's like worshiping a demigod or a human being, or for that matter, any other jiva. No matter how elevated they may be, their power is not independent to or greater than the Lord. And it's considered one of the offenses in chanting Hare Krishna to have this misunderstanding in chanting the Lord's name, to think that the name of any other person is either more powerful than the name of the source or independently powerful, which means that any power that's there is derived from anywhere else except for that source itself. So if we have that misconception, we're chanting with a kind of a backwards conception. We don't get the full taste of Maha Mantra. We don't get this full enlivening effect, which this verse is talking about. So the first stage is to understand that bhakti, this devotional service performed to the Lord, is actually so much better than not practicing bhakti. It gives us access to this incredible process of self-purification. It gives us access to this association of devotees. It gives freedom from the sufferings of life, which are really due to the contact with the modes of nature. That's where sufferings come from. All these attachments, all these misunderstandings, all this anxiety, all this fear of loss, up to and including the fear of death, is just due to misunderstandings coming from attachment to the modes of nature. And bhakti very quickly purifies us of these things. And in a spiritual benefit that actually renders everything else practically insignificant, it gives us Krishna himself, or whichever form of the Lord we're actually approaching. And so this is all true. And there's even a higher level of understanding to this verse, which Prabhupada focuses on in this purport. He focuses on how, of all the forms of Godhead, Krishna is actually the most attractive. And this is spiritual mathematics. There's the most attractive, there's more attractive, and there's the supremely attractive, and they're all on the same spiritual platform of not being inferior in any way. It's not that any form of the Lord, Ramachandra, Vishnu, Vamana, even Balaram, it's not that they're actually less than Krishna, but Krishna actually manifests the totality of all of his attractive potency. The science of this is given in the Nectar of Devotion, where it's described how any living entity can have certain qualities when they're in their purified state. So any pure devotee living in a body like ours, or even Brahma's, a demigod's body, can have up to a certain level of qualities manifest. But some qualities are only manifest in Lord Shiva's existence, because Lord Shiva is actually, he's between the jiva and the Lord. He's something like the jiva in touch with the modes of nature, or the Lord in touch with the modes of nature, just like milk in touch with certain elements becomes yogurt, but it's actually still not really different than milk. But higher than that is the Lord. And the Lord exhibits certain qualities even Lord Shiva cannot manifest. But of all the forms of the Lord, only Krishna manifests a very few select qualities. For example, there's the sweetness of his flute playing. There's his all-attractive potency. There's a certain attractiveness to Krishna that is not manifested even in Rama or Nrsimhadev. There is also, there's the sweetness of his pastimes and the magic of his pastimes. Krishna's pastimes have a magic that's actually super excellent, as Srila Prabhupada puts it. And the last quality that Krishna shows that his other avatars don't even show is the amazing love and devotion of his devotees, such as in Vrindavan. So what Prabhupada focuses on in this purport is this truth. Because the Bhagavatam is giving so many forms of the Lord, and they're all glorious and capable of giving us liberation and pure devotion. And only Krishna has these above and beyond qualities. And the Bhagavatam itself points this out, that in the next chapter, remember the Sanskrit. I'm going to look it up. Never speculate. If you don't know what something is, it's good to know where it is. So in the next chapter, there's a list of avatars, a partial list of avatars. And then we get to, I think, verse 28. Ete chanksha kalaf pungsa krishnas tu bhagavan swayam. Indradi vyakulam lokam hridayanti yuge yuge. All the above mentioned incarnations are either plenary portions or portions of the plenary portions of the Lord. But Lord Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. Krishnas tu bhagavan swayam. Krishna's to Bhagavan Swayam. He's the original person. Departure eva hidashantaram abhipetya dipayate hivritu hetu saman dharma. Is tadrik esha, forget how it finishes. Govindam adipurisham tamaham bhajami. Departure, that just like there may be an original candle, and every candle that's lit from that candle has the equal potency to that first candle. But still, there is one candle that lit the other ones. And similarly, Brahma sings, Govindam Adipurisham, that Govinda, Krishna, is the original candle, the original incarnation, the original form, from which all the others manifest. And so there's a certain sweetness there that's manifest in Krishna's forms that we don't see anywhere else. We've been reading in the Krishna book. We just finished chapters 33, 34, 35. And in 29 to 34 to 33, we had gopis associating with Krishna. And we had a discussion, clarification of who these gopis were. And some of the gopis are eternal associates with the Lord. And some of the gopis are what's called sadhana siddha. They've become perfected by spiritual practice. And at the level of perfection, it doesn't matter whether your perfection was from practice or you're already in the spiritual world. Perfect is perfect. But for our understanding, the previous practice of these now gopis is delineated, and it's described that many of them were rishis. They were great sages who practiced bhakti towards Lord Ramachandra in Rama's pastimes. And Rama is an incredibly important avatar and very attractive in his own right. He's human-like, so he's also very relatable. But their specific desire for relating to Krishna was not something that he was prepared to reciprocate with in that form, because Rama is so dharmic. He's not going to bend the rules of human society in order to do what Krishna does, which is dance with all these girls. And so the freedom to associate with the Lord was available for them when Krishna came as Krishna. And so he comes, and they all have taken birth in the wombs of Gopi mothers in Vrindavan and grown up and developed love for him and had it refined by association with the descending devotees from the spiritual world, spiritual Vrindavan, who they're associating with day in and day out. And they've hankered for Krishna and wanted Krishna, and that pure devotion is completely developed. And the inability to be with him is described by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. The pain of not being with Krishna burned away all the remnants of any former bad karma. And the joy of meditating on him in their hearts burned away, the joy of that burned away any good karma they had left. The good karma means you're destined to stick around for more pleasure and enjoyment. That was burned away by the joy of meditating on him in their heart until finally they could be with him. And so they're looking for him and they're singing for him and they're, where are you, Krishna? And then he comes and they're dancing for a night of Brahma, 4.32 billion years. And this is something that they could not do with Rama. No one can do with anybody except for Krishna. This is actually so shocking and amazing that the gods and goddesses in the higher heavenly planets are looking at this and they're like, wow, it is so inspiring and unique. And that's what Srila Prabhupada is focusing on here. In forms of the personality of Godhead other than Sri Krishna and Baladev, Baladev is Balaram, first expansion, there is no facility for intimate personal contact as in the transcendental pastimes of the Lord at Vrajabhumi. There's a way in which all the pastimes of the Lord are important to hear, and there's a very special sweetness to Vrindavan pastimes, which is why Srila Prabhupada paused translating the Bhagavatam systematically to give us the Krishna book, because Krishna book is just Krishna, and it begins with Vrindavan. And so both things are true. We don't only hear about Vrindavan, we don't only hear about Krishna as, Krishna, the son of Nanda Maharaj. We hear about Krishna in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. We hear about other forms of the Lord, such as Balaram, Nrsimhadev, Vamanadev, Matsya Avatar, Kurmadev, form after form. They're all so important. And we also give special credit and importance to Krishna. And we're especially grateful for hearing those pastimes because there is a certain quality there that's not available anywhere else. It's like Vishnu is the Lord at the office because he's overseeing the modes of nature. Why does Vishnu have to oversee the modes of nature? It's for us. There's no need for the modes of nature for him. The modes of nature is for the material world. And Vishnu is what's called a guna avatar, an avatara overseeing a guna, a mode of nature. He oversees the mode of goodness. Lord Shiva is also a guna avatar. It's a special avatar of the Lord in the category of overseeing the mode of ignorance. Brahma oversees the mode of passion. So all of this is necessary for a material world to function as it is. And that's all for the conditioned souls, i.e. all of us. That's doing a job, in other words, an important job. This is what's called Srishti Lila, the pastime of the Lord of manifesting the material world and facilitating all of us to do what we're doing, which is either try to be God or look for God, one way or another, or a little bit of both. And that's God at the office. But Krishna is God at home, God at play, God at rest. And so there's a way in which any knowledge about the Lord in any authorized form that's not, invented, an actual form of the Lord, is incredibly important because that knowledge, whether it's his name, his actual form, what he looks like, his activities, his associates, that sound vibration sets off this chain that we just heard about. It creates devotees which give us a taste for hearing about that sound vibration, which then we take to and purifies us of the modes of nature, which helps us develop love for Krishna himself in any form. And there's a way in which we're especially grateful to hear about Krishna as he is because we're developing the capacity for intimately connecting with him. And that should engender great humility because nobody actually earns this. This is not a material thing. In the modes of nature, there's a dynamic where we pay a price and we get the thing we paid for. And if you have good enough karma, you get a certain result. And Hiranyakashipu showed this too, where he performed severe austerities, the likes of which cannot even be performed by anybody. For tens of thousands of years, he stood on the tips of his toes, and he wouldn't move, just focusing his life energy in one place. His body was actually consumed by living entities. He had to maintain his life within the bones. He was like a necromancer, somehow staying in his body despite his body being bone. And he had earned actually certain boons from the demigods. Brahma was forced to come and say, okay, what would you like to have? But he could not give him a spiritual body. He could not give him immortality. The point I'm making is that in material consciousness, we are used to this sense of like, okay, even if there is a God, if I do good, then I get the result. And this is a merchant kind of mentality, is that like, I paid the price, give me the result, right? I did the work, give me my degree. I've bought the item, give me the item, right? And it's not like that with Krishna, with bhakti. It's not like, ultimately, it's not that we've done the bhakti and he's owing us something. It's actually a gift. All of it's a gift, including the practice. Everything is a gift. So when we're hearing about the parts and parcels of the Lord like us, taking shelter of the Lord, and all of his incarnations have this incredible potency to purify us and uplift us and situate us in bhakti. And Krishna is also super excellent. The thing we want to look for is that this creates humility, that wow, and here I am, even like on the tip of my toe is dipping into the ocean of this, even occasionally. What an incredible gift. And Srila Prabhupada's mercy is that he's giving us a glimpse into this. So just to summarize, we've heard this beautiful section, these stages of evolution of consciousness, and now we're coming to this transcendental logic. Certainly, therefore, since time immemorial, all transcendentalists have been rendering devotional service to the Lord, especially Lord Krishna, the source, because such devotional service is enlivening to itself. And we talked about how any form of the Lord can grant liberation and is worthy of devotion, and their sound vibrations thereof about them are incredibly important, and Krishna is especially important. He's God at play, and how there's a certain freedom there, as the gopis experienced, who had previously been associates of Lord Ramachandra. they couldn't have with him what they had with Krishna, although there's no fundamental difference. This is Krishna as the Lord, fully giving facility for intimate connection, and talking about the humility and gratitude that comes from realizing this, or even hearing about it. And the last thing I'll say is the verse uses the word muda, with great delight. Devotees have been rendering devotional service with great delight. As the second verse of the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Raj Vidya Rajguyam Pavitram Idam Uttamam Pratyaksha Vagamam Dharmam Susukam Kartamavyagam. Bhakti is susukam, very joyfully performed. There is a way in which just practicing bhakti, no matter at what level you're at, is performed with great delight. There's joy in it, and we want to look for that. We want to make sure that we have some childlike enthusiasm always, because it's, in many ways, it can be like daunting or hard work or scary or intimidating or humbling, even shocking if we're coming face to face with the material desires and the different things in the heart that are there. And still there should be this sense of delight. It's a delightful process. There's delight to be found in it. It's actually magic, because Krishna's magic. So we'll pause there now. Om Tat Sat. We'll take any reflections or questions, comments on anything you heard from the verse or from the Srila Prabhupada's purport or my commentary.
The line in the purport where it says, therefore, Lord Sri Krishna is the original form of Godhead, and he is the last word in the transcendence.
Yes.
That second part, he is the last word in the transcendence. Is that speaking to what you were speaking to, of like that all of the avatars are, so important, and that Krishna is like the supermost,
Yeah. All these incarnations are plenary portions of and portions of plenary portions of the Lord, but Krishna's to Bhagavan Swayam. Swayam means personally. He is himself the original person. All these incarnations is in reference to a list of incarnations, partial list, because it's said that the Lord's incarnations, it's described there, are like the waves of the ocean. There's not a finite amount of them. They're actually infinite. Even the jivas are themselves infinite. There's an infinite number of living entities, not a finite number, infinite, which is something that the material mind can't even understand. But all of them, all these incarnations of the Lord, of God, are part and parcel of, are actually expansions of Krishna. There's a finite number. There's one source of all the infinite sources of infinite forms of God, and that's Krishna. Which can sound almost unbelievable. And that's the cool thing, is bhakti is here to give us a way to experience the truth of that. We're not meant to just like believe that.
Right.
We're meant to actually experience it, because that's the point. It's not a belief system. Krishna is only ever real to the extent that we even experience him. Any feeling we have of the truth of Krishna is part of the experience of realizing him in our bhakti process, which we're meant to come to face with him in one form or another.
And then I love that last thing that you said, we're either trying to see God or be God.
Yeah.
It's so simple and so true. And one is control, and one is that level of surrender. And it made me think about just remaining. You were speaking to it a little bit when you were saying like practicing bhakti joyfully and with delight. And I was thinking about curiosity, remaining curious, and like having that childlike wonder. And then you're speaking to that too. So keeping that alive in our practice, and
curiosity, gratitude, humility. Those are hallmarks. Her Grace Yamuna Devi Dasi, an extremely advanced devotee. In the early 70s, when she was with Srila Prabhupada, just a few years into her practice, Srila Prabhupada indicated that she was at the level of bhava. She was at the level of ecstatic love, ecstasy for Krishna. It's just right before prema in the advancement of devotion. It's an extremely high thing. And that was before 30 more years of practice, before she left her body, Later in her life, Yamuna Dasi is not with us on the planet anymore. She left her body in 2011, I think, or 9, 10, or 11. And she indicated that, in her opinion, the number one thing that devotees should look out for, and the society should look out for, that is the enemy of advancement in devotional service, is entitlement. She said entitlement is actually the greatest thief of bhakti. As one person put it, entitlement is the thief of joy. Because if you're entitled, you don't actually experience spontaneous happiness anymore because you think you deserve it. So how can you actually spontaneously be happy? So she was saying, like, no matter how advanced you become, you have to be careful that you don't think you deserve this position or you deserve anything, because that automatically like contracts and constricts your relationship with Krishna. Bhakti is not based on that. So these qualities of like a lack of considering oneself entitled, humility and a generosity of spirit. These are always going to come up in the Shastra and in the form and pastimes of great devotees, because this is fundamental. This is part of like our fundamental relationship to Krishna. So I think you're touching on that. So I'm mentioning.
Thank you.
Any more reflections?
Haribol.
Haribol.
I loved when you were talking about, I mean, you said so many beautiful things, but when you were talking about how Vishnu is Krishna in the office, and then Krishna's form is Krishna at home. And that really is such a sweet way to think about the level of the intimate relationship you can create with Krishna, and really just kind of like simplifies it, right? It just, home is our place of comfort. It's our place of peace. It's our place of like our closest people reside there with us. And so I just really appreciated that, because it also makes, Krishna very approachable in that way. Really, really such an approachable way to see God. And I've been reflecting a little bit about Christianity lately, and thinking about how, that's the part where, in that whole faith for me, that I never felt like the interpretation of God, or in that way, it was never really fully approachable. It always felt like something that was in the far distance for me, because it wasn't like this like ability to welcome such a loving relationship with God. And so I really appreciated you saying it just like the way you said it there, because it's a really sweet way to just begin to continue in deepening in my relationship with Krishna. And also, like, I was reading something somewhere, so it's hard to remember. I read everything, but something about how it's easy to serve. I think it was in Queen Kunti prayer, maybe. It's easy to serve your families. It's like easy to serve at home. It's easy to serve your families. It's easy to serve your loved ones. And sometimes serving Krishna feels harder than that. And but really, it's the same level. And so to think about that as Krishna's form, as Krishna at home, it provides us opportunity to really begin to think about, like, how am I serving my family, and how can I also serve Krishna in such a loving way as I would, for my daughter or my partner or what have you. So I think that is just really wonderful. Thank you very much.
Can I have a 7th canto of Bhagavatam? Okay, 7. Yes. Yeah, it's actually completely natural to serve Krishna. It's such a natural thing. Prahlad Maharaj says this in Canto 7. And I'm going to try and look up the verse. I was also going to say something.
That might be where I read it, Shamya, maybe.
Really?
I can't remember. I think I'm reading there, I'm reading in Kunti, I'm reading in some other things, but I can't remember. That might be actually where I read it. That's amazing.
He's I believe in chapter 6, he's instructing his schoolmates. These are all such amazing verses. Anyway, it's there. Sri Prahlad is talking about this. And in reference to your point about God at home, the Srimad Bhagavatam of Srila Sanatana Goswami is an extensive work that describes this. It's actually an amazing book. It's something I recommend. Actually, Srila Prabhupada says in a purport in the 1st canto, which I'm not going to look up because it's going to take more time, but early in the 1st canto, he says, if anybody wants to understand the science of Godhead, they must read this book, Srimad Bhagavatam. He doesn't say you should, he says you must. I recommend, as has been recommended to me, after reading Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, Shuddhicana Chatamrita, you can put that on your list to read afterwards, is Srimad Bhagavatamrita. And it's, among other things, it's the story of one soul's going from loka to loka, material planet, spiritual planet, different places, until he finds himself in Vrindavan, because he's pulled by this desire for an intimate connection with Krishna that he cannot even have in with Vishnu. He's calling out to him as a friend, and it's very touching to the heart to hear about that. Everywhere that bhakti is performed, Krishna is intimately associating with devotees, and still there's something very special about Krishna. Thank you. Any other reflections? While I continue to look up this verse. But we need more reflections.
Can you hear me very well?
The only cure is more reflections.
Hi.
Yes.
So I think the big takeaway for me today is Krishna is he's the gravity point, right? He's the center. I was talking to Willa yesterday. We were singing Nrsimhadev in the car, and we have a picture of Nrsimhadev in the car, and she likes to hold it while we sing it. And I was explaining to her that Nrsimhadev came as the protector of the devotees, but it's Krishna, and he's the source of everything, where our personal connection is with him and with God, and our source of love is coming from. And for me, it's like whenever I'm having really a rough day, or I'm having a rough week with practice, I just go to Krishna. I don't think about anything else. And it's just like he's the rescue line, the connection to the absolute source, where you have those connections. And I do have personal connections with other forms of Krishna. Krishna is the deepest one. And that's my reflection.
Thank you. Yeah, the verse is 762.
Oh, okay. Wait.
I'll quote that, but just what you're saying about Krishna as our shelter. Yes, I appreciate that point, that there's actually a way in which in the heart we're all developing this sense of home, with Krishna. And just like Prahlad, when Nrsimhadev appeared, it was unprecedented. But Prahlad could recognize that this is his Lord, because he had devotion. So he could see that this is the Lord in this form. It's just Krishna. That's the particular form he's manifested for this time. So the verse I was going to refer to earlier is 762 from Bhagavatam. The human form of life affords one a chance to return home back to Godhead. Therefore, every living entity, especially in the human form of life, must engage in devotional service to the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu. This devotional service is natural because Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the most beloved, the master of the soul, and the well-wisher of all other living beings. So, as Mel was saying, sometimes it could feel really natural to serve family, and serving Krishna may feel unnatural or difficult. That's just our conditioning. It's actually the most natural. That service to Krishna is actually the fountainhead of all other forms of service. Yeah.
Can I share this verse? I feel
Sure.
like me in text 16 in that same chapter.
Sure.
Oh, my friends, sons of demons, in this material world, even those who are apparently advanced in education have the propensity to consider this is mine and that is for others. Thus, they are always engaged in providing the necessities of life to their families in a limited conception of family life, just like uneducated cats and dogs. They are unable to take to spiritual knowledge. Instead, they are bewildered and overcome by ignorance.
Yeah, when one is overcome by duality, this is mine, aham mameti. This is me, and that belongs to me. And then their service propensity, which is natural, it comes from the soul, will be directed only through the material energy, in terms of family, in terms of whatever other designations. And to the extent that they're putting blinders on and avoiding looking at the source, it'll continue to be expressed only in the material energy.
Okay.
Any
more? Leanne, Martin?
I do have one. Can you hear me okay
Yes.
also? Okay, good. I was just listening when you were talking and, always writing down a lot of things. But one of the things that I was happy to, like, to reflect on too is Krishna is God at, when you said Krishna is God at play, rest, at home, like pretty much then I kept thinking, like, after you said that, like he's like everything. He's like all the things, right? Because you can see him in everywhere. And then how special it is when you kept describing like his sweetness of his pastimes and unique uniqueness and how he's inspiring, and just like how fortunate, just reflecting on how fortunate it is that we can have this here, and we're so lucky. So that's it, really. Thank you for a wonderful class.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Something like Stavara Jangamana Deke Ishtamurti Sarvatrahaya Nija Ishtadeva Spurti. That the pure devotee, when one comes to this level of pure devotion, they see the world, but they don't just see it as other people see it. They actually see the Lord as manifestations of their own worshipable Lord. They see the world as manifestations of their own worshipable Lord everywhere. Everything is like, and so when Srila Prabhupada was saying like, the devotees went to the beach to have some exercise. They were like in the sun and sand and going swimming. And one devotee was saying, well, Srila Prabhupada, maybe this was going to like help them with their exercise or what, their life. And someone else was saying, well, they'll forget about Krishna. This is all just Maya. And Prabhupada said, well, how can they forget about Krishna? Krishna is the ocean. He's the sun. We may not be able to apply that, but that's a vision into the glimpse into the vision of a pure devotee, that they actually see that all the time. This is Krishna. The sun on my shoulders, he said, is Krishna embracing me. Srila Prabhupada is saying, this is not just an occasional poetic thought. It's like actually seeing that all the time, that Krishna is manifesting in all these ways. That's what we have to look forward to, because that's actually the Mahabhagavata's vision, a very advanced devotee's vision. So, Chai. Martin.
Yeah. Just quickly, I found your commentary really inspiring, and it reminded me of chapter 17 of the Bhagavad Gita, where he's talking about like in the beginning there are like the divisions of faith, and how like people in meta goodness worship many gods, right? Like all the different modes of material nature worship different things and view them as God. And then I felt like your commentary really nicely dovetailed with that. And I don't have a poetic way of saying it, but like it really highlighted for me that like Krishna is like the best. Like like that's it's just like that's as good as that's the best. And it's just a nice reminder.
Yeah, as that chapter points out, Shraddhamayo him Purusho. Krishna says the living entity is made of their faith. This is part of who they are. This is part of who we are. We're little givers of attention. And someone can say like, faith, that's for the religious. It's like, no, everyone is worshiping. You're worshiping your parents. You're worshiping your political leaders. You're worshiping your sports team. That's all little forms of worship. We have to give. We can't not give. We're always giving. If you don't have kids, you'll have a dog. You don't have a dog, you'll have a fish. There's something you're going to give your heart somewhere. There's just a way in which that's always there. So in this mode of nature, they worship like that. They worship like Krishna is saying in that chapter. But Krishna is the best. You're going to get the best results. That's what this verse is saying. And other verses coming up, you're going to get the best results of worshiping Krishna. You may as well do that. Why would you worship anyone else? Devotees have used that logic in Bhagavatam. Sometimes they're like, why would anybody give their heart to anyone else but such a glorious master as Krishna? Look at how he reciprocates in this way. Look at how this, look at how that. Why would anybody waste their time serving anybody but him? It's a real life hack. Real time saver.
Time saver.
Once we realize that, as Bob Dylan sang, you got to serve somebody. You got to serve somebody. So here are your options. This is Krishna. This is what he's like. And our whole bhakti practice is us just like developing a sense of his own character just by our practice and realizing him, but also hearing about how he reciprocates. Like, wow, look at how he reciprocates with the gopis and Prahlad, and this person, that person, Prabhupada, and it's like, that's the standard of his character. That's who he is. Well, why wouldn't I? Shouldn't I really want to be with that? Wouldn't I want to like know that person myself? He's really amazing. We're actually falling in love with him a little bit more and more that way. I think there's something in the chat too. Can you check?
It might have been Tanya departing.
Well, there's several things.
Stacy said, or Tanya said, thank you so much for this wonderful class today. She had to hop off at 7. Stacy, Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisance of the law. Glory to Srila Prabhupada. Always appreciate your lectures, Shamya Pras. Melanie, it was definitely that chapter that I was reading. Such a beautiful chapter. Prahlad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Leanne said, thank you for helping us to remember.
Thank you for helping me. All of your attentive ears are making the Bhagavatam come to life more and more. Jai. We'll pause here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Krishna Bhagavan ki jai, Vanchakalpatarubhyascha, Kripasindhubhyeva Patitanam, Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo. Have a great day in Bhakti. May you be free from any sense of entitlement. Hare Krishna.